it's late in the day, but just a quick check. How many of us here know the stereotype of the Asian overachiever kid? You know, the guy in class, the Mr. Know-it-all, who can't wait to tell you all of his acolytes all day long. Not sure what I mean? Not sure what that means. Now we can see. Speaking about Asian overachievers, if we're not sure what I mean, let me demonstrate. By the age of 16, I was ranked first in Hong Kong and China for public speaking. By the age of 18, I scored a full 45 in my end-of-year IB exam. And by the age of 21, I graduated from Cambridge with first-class honors on 3 scholarships. But were these achievements what brought me the most amount of joy and sense of fulfillment? No. I realized that these awards and titles simply became yet another trophy cup, collecting dust upon a forgotten shelf in my parents' flat. Today, I want to share with you how I've tried and am still trying to break free from that mold by focusing on 3 things: joy, authenticity, and balance. Slowly breaking away from chasing a version of success that was never truly my own. The first thing I've been trying to do is to prioritize joy over purpose. Growing up, a lot of us are unintentionally taught to view life as a series of transactions. Study hard to get into a good school, get into a good school, to get into a good job, get into a good job so that we can have a better life. Now, this sort of mindset is helpful in giving us structure, but it can also feel incredibly stifling. It turns everything we do into a cost and benefit analysis. And as other speakers have mentioned today, it kind of reinforces the message that we should see everything as merely a means to an end. So, what should we do? First, let me allow myself to give a brief example. When I was really young, when I was around 11 years old, I was playing the oboe. I was first chair in my primary school wind band, which on paper seems like a massive success. I then got into SBCC, and you know what I did? I instantly dropped it. Why? Because I never actually played the oboe out of joy or out of passion. I merely saw it as a stepping stone, a way to get into a prestigious high school. And the moment that transaction was complete, I was feeling myself feeling burnt out and unfulfilled. But now let's compare this with my experience with dancing. I actually started learning K-pop dances as well when I was 13. For a lot of people, they learn because they like K-pop, they want to be more fit, they want to be more in tune with their bodies as they dance. For me, I had a much bigger purpose. I wanted to impress girls. I know, it's a super noble cause. But I remember telling my parents this, and they were like, "Christian, you can't tell your left hand from your right foot. How on earth are you going to get good at this?" But I didn't care, because I was actually doing this just for joy, just trying to have a bit of fun. I wasn't doing it to pad my CV. So I started taking YouTube classes. I was learning mirrored K-pop dances. And a year later, I joined my school team. Not because necessarily, again, that I wanted another thing on my CV, but because it was so much fun to be dancing with a team, to learn a choreography, and to perform it for other people. But now, here's the funny thing about joy. When you start to pursue something you love, you find that somehow it weaves itself into different aspects of your life in ways that you never could have even imagined. Dancing taught me confidence, creativity, and resilience, skills that I wasn't necessarily trying to get when I first started to learn dance. And years later, when I first started my TikTok account, it was also what led me to connecting with millions of people today. What started as a fun hobby ended up shaping who I am today. But don't just take it from me. There's a broader theory called the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. And what it suggests is that when you're experiencing positive emotions like joy, happiness, they broaden your perspective. They give you more opportunities to try new experiences, to go for a path that you might not would have originally taken. Once you've broadened that, the theory says that it then helps you build different things. Creativity, relationships, experiences, things that you can then rely on in the future. So my first piece of advice to you is this. Not everything you do needs needs to have a grand end purpose. Sometimes it's okay to prioritize joy. And in a high-pressure society like in Hong Kong, where 1 in 4 secondary school students and adolescents suffer from mental health troubles, this is more important than ever. Don't confine yourself to making choices based on what you think will lead to success. Instead, allow yourself to prioritize joy. Give your space to play, to explore, and to let success come to you in ways you never would have even imagined. Now, the second thing I've been trying to do is I've been trying to focus on the opinions of those who matter. I was invited today as a content creator, but as you would have imagined, when I first started out, I didn't have millions of followers across TikTok and Instagram. Back in the day, I had a lot of hate comments, words like cringe, try hard. You can read some of the funnier ones I have here on the screen. But I'll admit, these comments stung. It's funny to laugh about them now, but they did affect me at the time. Because no matter how much we tell ourselves to not care, it's hard to do that. Aristotle once said that man is by nature a social animal, which essentially means that he thinks that we try to seek approval. More modern psychology theories like conformity bias confirm this. It shows we have a propensity to really try to conform and not stick out too much. This is why things like a disapproving glance we have on the street, a single comment, or someone just whispering behind someone's ear can stay and linger in our minds a lot longer than it should. But here's the truth. Not all opinions are created equal. Over time, I realized that the people who are commenting on those things didn't actually know me. They didn't care about my character, my development, my growth, what I stood for. They just wanted to leave a quick, funny comment that they thought would be harmless. They weren't really interested in trying to understand my story. So I started asking myself this over the years. Does this person's opinion matter in a week, a month, a year? And the answer was no. I tried to let it go. Now, this lesson wasn't just about social media comments or content. I actually learned this lesson on a much deeper level when I came to terms with my sexuality. Growing up in Hong Kong, I knew I was bi from a very young age. But as you can imagine, back then, even now, being bisexual or being a member of the LGBT+ community can be incredibly isolating. I was very fortunate that the people that I did tell, my friends and family since a very young age, were relatively accepting. But for most people in Hong Kong and around the world, that is not the case. 29% experience discrimination in their employment, not just in high school, even as adults in their employment. And recently, Hong Kong hosted gay games, but a research was done by CUHK and said that over half of the athletes had felt homophobia in their city sports teams and associations. As you can imagine, there are countless other research about high school, secondary school, about the difficulties that people face. There's a quote that I really like from activist Alexander Leon. He once said, "Queer people don't grow up as ourselves. We grow up playing a version of ourselves that sacrifices authenticity to minimize humiliation. The massive task of our adult lives is to unpick which parts of ourselves are truly us, and which parts we've created to protect us." This quote really resonated with me when I went to Cambridge for university. There, it was a place that celebrated expressing your identity, and I realized how much strength that gave me to be authentic. That authenticity then came across in my social media posts. It's a huge reason of how my social media fandom started, as I started sharing bits and pieces of my relationship with Tom. When I then returned to Hong Kong for work, I realized that this experience really helped sort out a lot of internalized homophobia that I had. I no longer felt the need to hide who I was, the person that I love and want to spend time with. I learned to focus on the opinions of those who actually mattered, and not the fleeting opinions of those who, honestly, I'll never see again. And that helped me live a much more authentic and purposeful life. So my second piece of advice to you is this. It's not about completely ignoring what other people think. As I mentioned, that's near impossible. What it is to focus on those that matter. The ones who see your growth, your character, and your potential. And when you do that, you give your space to have risks, to explore, to grow, to really find the authentic version of you, and to live a much more fulfilling life. So far I've told you that by prioritizing joy over purpose, and by finding the courage to be authentic and only caring about the opinions of those who matter, has really helped me break free from certain molds that society has told us. But I must confess one thing. As an influencer, I'm actually also contributing to another mold. One that seems to show that us influencers can have it all. We travel the world, we have an amazing career, we're able to have a perfect relationship. And it's not just me. There's a theory called the highlight reel effect. This won't come as a surprise to many of you, but we tend to curate and show only the bits of our lives that are positive, that we want others to know about. What is less well known, however, is the impact that can have to us as viewers. When we start seeing and consuming so much of this content, it can subconsciously affect what we think is the norm. We start to think that it's normal for us and that we should strive to do more, to save time, to be more efficient, to balance every aspect of our lives and achieve perfection, much like these influencers have seemingly been able to do. But as you can guess, is what I'm about to say, it's actually a lot tougher than that. Behind the scenes, there's so much effort that goes into balancing these different aspects. So I want to share a little bit today about some of the things I've learned about balance. What it's not, as I said, it's not about doing things more effectively or efficiently to get to a level of perfection everywhere. Instead, what it is to learn that balance means making intentional trade-offs. It's about realizing that sacrifices will have to be made. Does that mean that I've already got this whole influencer, career, relationship balance thing sorted out? No, I'm still definitely trying to figure it out along the way. Just to give you an example, 2 years ago, I was offered a prestigious job offer at a management consultant firm here in Hong Kong. Without a second thought, I was like, yeah, of course, I'm going to come back, I'm going to see friends and family, it's going to be great. But what I didn't realize was that this was actually shaped by some subliminal messages that I think a lot of us have had since growing up. I'm not sure about you, but in my high school, my teachers would be like, it's okay to date, so long as it doesn't affect your academic performance. And what that kind of already shows you is, in Hong Kong society especially, we've been taught to prioritize academic achievement and success over everything else. It wasn't until I had a pretty tough conversation with my boyfriend that I realized the wider implications of this decision for me to come back to Hong Kong. Not only did it mean that I had to pause indefinitely my pursuit of potentially becoming a full-time content creator, more importantly, it meant that I was taking a risk on our relationship, as now I would have to go into a long-distance phase of Tom and I's relationship. Thankfully, if you ask me now whether I regret that decision, the answer is no. What I don't say so much on social media, however, is the sacrifices that I've had to make to get to where I am today. Career-wise, yes, I'm on a clear career progression. I'm also in a line of work that I learn a lot and is super fulfilling. But I've also had to really take a pause and take time off work to spend time with my boyfriend on social media pursuits. And that means that my trajectory is a little bit slower. Social media-wise, as you can tell, I'm not a full-time content creator, so I can't make as much content as I used to. Relationship-wise, we're in a super strong place, but it does mean that we have to take extra time and effort and money to get to see each other a lot. So in other words, balance and perfection are incompatible. These things cannot coexist. Balance will always mean sacrifice. So how do we find balance in a world that constantly demands more of us? Here are 3 strategies, I call them the 3 S's, that I've been trying to do to really try to create space in my life for me to make those sacrifices intentionally. The first is setting boundaries. What that means is in work or even in our social life, we need to learn when to say no. As a 22-year-old, FOMO is real. But with that idea, that message that sacrifices need to be made, we need to realize that yes, sometimes we might not get the latest gossip the quickest, we might be sacrificing certain career options, but if that's something that you think aligns with priorities, then that's something you need to learn to do. The second is to actively schedule downtime. I don't know about you, but when I'm in my work, I'm in a work zone, I tend to kind of just forget time. And it's by 9 or 10 p.m. that I realize, wait a second, the whole day's flown by. But when we start to actively schedule and set apart time in the day or in the week to spend with ourselves, with our family and friends, and also to inform others about that decision, it can be an incredible way for us to maintain balance amongst the different aspects of our life. The third thing is to stay mindful of your priorities. As I just mentioned 2 years ago, my priority was career first. Now, that's evolved. It's a bit more balanced. But it's going to be the same for you. Over time, your priorities are going to change, they're going to morph. So it's important to really take some time and to reevaluate. And most importantly, remember that balance isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about trying and giving yourself the space to try and fail until you find a recipe that works for you. So, as I stand here today, reflecting on the twists and turns of my success journey, I realized that my definition for success has changed drastically. It used to be a lot more focused on external things, like titles, awards. Now, I'm not saying that these weren't important. These are hugely influential to shaping who I am today and where I am. But they were not the things that brought me the greatest amount of joy or sense of accomplishment. Breaking the mold is not about abandoning ambition or abandoning success. It's about redefining it. It's about prioritizing joy over purpose. It's about focusing on the opinions of those who matter. And it's about realizing that balance is imperfect, and that's okay. Here's the thing. Success isn't one size fits all. I've just told you my story about what my current definition of success is, but what is yours? What will your metamorphosis be? Thank you.